Michael Jordan discovers his childhood barber lost everything. His response changes everything. Michael Jordan's success story had been told 1,000 times. From growing up in a modest home in Wilmington, North Carolina, to becoming the greatest basketball player the world had ever seen, his rise to fame was legendary. His name was synonymous with greatness, and his influence extended far beyond basketball. But for all the accolades and championships, Michael never forgot where he came from, the streets of Wilmington, the people who had shaped him, and the small community that had supported him along the way. One of those people was Mr. Henry, the barber who had cut Michael's hair since he was a child. Mr. Henry wasn't just a barber, he was a confidant, a mentor, and a friend. He had seen Michael grow from a young boy into the athlete who would go on to dominate the NBA. Michael's visits to the barbershop were more than just about getting a haircut. They were a time to talk about life, dreams, and the future. The memories of those talks, of the man who always greeted him with a smile and wise words, were some of Michael's fondest from his early years. As Michael's career took off, he often found himself far from home, traveling the world with the Chicago Bulls, winning championships, and making history. But despite his newfound fame and fortune, he stayed grounded, always remembering the people who helped him along the way. Every time he went back to Wilmington, Mr. Henry's barbershop was a must-visit destination. The familiar sounds of clippers buzzing, the smell of shaving cream, and the comforting chatter filled the air, reminding Michael of a simpler time when he wasn't just a global icon, but just another young man trying to make a name for himself. Years went by, and the visits became less frequent as Michael's schedule grew busier and his career took him to new heights. But Mr. Henry remained a constant figure in his life, and Michael would always take time to catch up when he could. But one day, during an off-season visit to Wilmington, Michael received some news that would shake him to his core. It was a call from an old friend, someone who had kept in touch with the people in Wilmington, including Mr. Henry. "Mike, I don't know if you've heard, but Mr. Henry, he's fallen on hard times," the friend said, his voice laced with concern. "He's lost everything. His barbershop closed down a couple of years ago, and he's been struggling to make ends meet. He's not doing well, Mike." Michael was taken aback. He couldn't believe it. The man who had been there for him, who had always had words of wisdom and support, was now facing hardships. He hadn't heard anything about Mr. Henry's troubles, and the news hit him hard. How could this happen? Michael thought to himself. Mr. Henry was always so proud, so strong. He was like family to me. He sat in silence for a moment, reflecting on the years that had passed, on the man who had been there for him when no one else was. Michael knew that Mr. Henry had built his barbershop from the ground up, and it pained him to think of it now closing its doors, leaving him in a place of uncertainty. It was in that moment that Michael realized something. He couldn't let Mr. Henry's story end this way. This man, who had been such an important part of his journey, deserved more than to be forgotten or left behind. Michael didn't know exactly what he would do, but he knew that this was his chance to make a difference for someone who had always been there for him. Without wasting another second, Michael picked up the phone and made a decision that would change everything. The call from Michael Jordan to his childhood barber, Mr. Henry, was brief but full of emotion. Michael's heart raced as he dialed the number he hadn't used in years. He was anxious, uncertain about what he might hear, but he knew he needed to reach out to the man who had played such an influential role in his life. The phone rang for a while before it was answered by a familiar, gravelly voice. "Hello?" The voice on the other end wasn't as vibrant as Michael remembered, but it still held the warmth that he had come to recognize over the years. "Mr. Henry," Michael said softly, "it's Mike. I heard what's been happening, and I wanted to check in on you. How have you been?" There was a long pause before Mr. Henry replied, his voice a little quieter than usual. "Mike, boy, I'm doing all right, well, as all right as I can be. You know, things haven't been easy, but you just keep going. Just keep going." Michael's heart sank. This wasn't the man he remembered, the confident, larger-than-life figure who had been a constant presence during his formative years. Mr. Henry had always been the one to give him advice, to tell him to keep his head high and to never stop striving. But now, hearing the weariness in his voice, Michael realized just how deep the struggle had gone. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mr. Henry," Michael replied, his voice thick with concern. "I can't believe things have gotten this bad. I didn't know. I should have been keeping in touch more, should have done more." Mr. Henry chuckled softly, though it sounded more like a sigh. "Don't be too hard on yourself, Mike. You've done more than enough for me. Watching you succeed, watching you make it out of this town, that's been enough. I'm proud of you, son. More than you know." There was a slight tremor in Mr. Henry's voice now, and Michael could tell the man was trying to hide the pain he was feeling. The once self-assured, proud Barber was now battling the reality of the struggles that had stripped away his livelihood. The barbershop that had once been a cornerstone of the community had been forced to close, and without it, Mr. Henry's life had taken a sharp turn for the worse. "I've been hearing about your situation, Mr. Henry," Michael said, his mind racing with possibilities. "You don't have to go through this alone. I'm here, and I want to help. Tell me what's going on. Tell me what you need." There was a brief silence, and then Mr. Henry's voice came through, softer but more resolute. "I've been holding on, Mike. Doing what I can to get by. It's just tough when you've spent your life building something and one day it's gone. But, like I said, I'll be all right. I've been all right all these years, and I'll keep pushing." Michael felt a lump form in his throat. The idea of his mentor, the man who had been so proud and strong, now having to scrape by with little to no support, hit him harder than he expected. He couldn't stand the thought of Mr. Henry struggling in silence. "Mr. Henry," Michael said, his voice now firm and full of determination, "I'm going to fix this. I want to make sure you're set. I'm going to get you back on your feet, and I'm not going to let you go through this alone." Mr. Henry paused, likely processing what Michael had said. "Mike, you've already done enough for me. You've made it. You've made it in ways I could never have imagined. I don't need much. Just keep doing what you're doing." But Michael wasn't about to let it end there. "No, Mr. Henry, you taught me how to fight, how to keep going, and now I'm going to help you fight through this. I want to make sure you're taken care of. No more struggling. You're part of my story, and I'm going to make sure you know how much you mean to me." The call ended soon after that, but Michael couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. He had made a promise, and he was going to keep it. He wasn't going to let Mr. Henry's struggles define him any longer. It was time for Michael to return the favor, to give back to the man who had given him so much, who had always been there, no matter what. The wheels were already in motion. Michael began to reach out to his network, trying to gather resources, support, and connections to help Mr. Henry. But more than just financial support, Michael knew he had to provide something deeper, something that would allow Mr. Henry to rebuild his confidence, his purpose, and his legacy. It wasn't just about fixing the material things, it was about restoring the spirit of the man who had once been a mentor and friend. Michael's next move would not just change Mr. Henry's life, it would transform their bond and set the stage for something that no one, including Michael, could have anticipated. After the phone call with Mr. Henry, Michael spent the next few days organizing a plan to help the man who had been such a vital part of his early years. He didn't just want to send money or offer a temporary solution, he wanted to make sure that Mr. Henry was truly taken care of, and that his legacy, his life's work, could be restored. Michael knew the first step was to help Mr. Henry get back into the business he loved, barbering. But this time, Michael wanted to do it right. He didn't want to simply give him a handout, he wanted to create a lasting opportunity for Mr. Henry, one that would allow him to rebuild his career and regain his sense of purpose. Michael reached out to a few business partners and people he trusted in the community, making it clear that he wanted to open a new barbershop for Mr. Henry, a place where he could not only work but mentor others. He wanted the shop to be more than just a place to cut hair, it would be a community hub, where people from all walks of life could come in, share stories, and feel like they were part of something special. Michael envisioned a space that honored Mr. Henry's legacy while helping to create new opportunities for others in the community. But there was another layer to this plan. Michael wanted to make sure Mr. Henry didn't have to worry about the day-to-day logistics of opening a new business. He arranged for a team to handle all the legal work, the permits, and the logistics so that Mr. Henry could focus on what he did best, cutting hair and talking to his customers. When Michael first shared his plan with Mr. Henry, the response was not what he expected. He had anticipated the usual resistance from his mentor, the prideful man who had always believed that he should handle things on his own. But instead, Mr. Henry was silent for a long moment before speaking. "Mike, I don't know what to say." Mr. Henry's voice was barely audible, his emotions evident. "You've already done more for me than anyone else ever has. I've spent my whole life working hard, building my business, and now you want to help me start over? I don't deserve this." Michael's voice was steady, full of conviction. "You deserve this, Mr. Henry. You gave me so much growing up. You believed in me when nobody else did. Now it's my turn to believe in you. I'm doing this because I want to help you. You helped me become who I am today, and this is the least I can do to repay you." For a long moment, Mr. Henry didn't respond. Then, finally, with a shaky breath, he said, "You don't know how much this means to me. You don't know how much I've struggled. But maybe this is a chance for me to do something new, something that feels right." The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, planning, and preparation. Michael's team worked tirelessly to secure the location, design the barbershop, and bring the vision to life. And in the meantime, Michael kept in touch with Mr. Henry, reassuring him that everything was moving forward. He made sure Mr. Henry was involved every step of the way, allowing him to provide input on the shop's design and feel. The grand opening day finally arrived, and Michael was there, standing by Mr. Henry's side, as they opened the doors to a brand new chapter. The barbershop was more than just a business. It was a place where people could gather, talk, and experience the same sense of community that Michael had known as a child. As they cut the ribbon together, Michael looked at Mr. Henry and smiled. "This is just the beginning, Coach. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but we're in this together. This shop isn't just yours, it's ours." Mr. Henry was speechless, overwhelmed with emotion. He had never expected such an incredible gesture, and yet here he was, standing in the shop that would give him a second chance. His eyes filled with tears as he turned to Michael, gratitude in every word. "Thank you, Mike. Thank you for giving me this. You didn't just give me a job, you gave me my life back." As the crowd began to gather inside the new barbershop, Michael watched with pride as Mr. Henry began to greet his customers. This wasn't just a business, it was a place of renewal, a testament to the power of mentorship and the strength of a bond that had lasted decades. And as Michael looked around the shop, he knew that this moment, this new chapter in both his and Mr. Henry's lives, was just the beginning. The response had been more than anyone could have expected, and Michael felt a deep sense of fulfillment knowing that he had made a difference in the life of the man who had made such a profound impact on his own. The next steps for Mr. Henry were clear. With Michael's help, he wasn't just starting a new business, he was beginning a new legacy, one that would be felt in the community for years to come. In the weeks that followed the grand opening of Mr. Henry's barbershop, the shop quickly became a beacon of hope for the local community. It wasn't just a place to get a haircut, it was a symbol of resilience and the power of second chances. People from all over Wilmington came to show support, not just for the quality of service, but for what the barbershop represented, a new beginning. As Mr. Henry got back to work, he felt the weight of the past years lift off his shoulders. The barbershop had become more than a business to him, it had become a place where he could pour all of his experience and knowledge into mentoring young people, just as he had once mentored Michael. The community began to take notice, and soon, young aspiring barbers came knocking, eager to learn from the man who had overcome so much. LeBron James, who had heard about the transformation, came to visit the barbershop, impressed by the change. He had been closely following Michael's actions and had heard the story of how he had helped his childhood mentor. He made it clear to Michael how proud he was of his gesture and how it was exactly the kind of leadership the community needed. "Mike, what you did for Coach Henry, it's incredible," LeBron said during his visit. "This is what leadership is all about. You didn't just help him start a business, you helped him regain his life, his sense of purpose. This is the kind of impact we all need to make in our communities." As the barbershop continued to thrive, Michael realized that this was more than just about giving Mr. Henry a second chance. It was about setting an example for others to follow. He had always been driven by competition and greatness on the basketball court, but now he realized that true greatness came from lifting others up, creating opportunities for them to succeed, and showing them that they weren't alone in their struggles. One afternoon, as Michael sat in the barbershop waiting for his turn to get a haircut, Mr. Henry sat down next to him, wiping his hands on a towel. His face was filled with pride and satisfaction. "You know, Mike, when I first started all this, I never thought I'd be back here, doing what I love," Mr. Henry said, his voice filled with emotion. "But you gave me that chance. You gave me a way back, and now I've got a team. I've got these young barbers looking up to me, wanting to learn, wanting to make something of themselves. It feels like I'm back in the game. And that's all thanks to you." Michael smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "You always believed in me, Mr. Henry. You showed me the way when I didn't know how to find it. This is just me giving back what you gave to me." They sat in silence for a moment, the sounds of clippers and conversation around them creating a peaceful ambience. Michael could feel the weight of everything that had transpired, the impact of his actions reverberating in the way the barbershop had flourished. It wasn't just about financial help, it was about rebuilding something that had been lost. It was about restoring dignity and respect, both for Mr. Henry and for the community he had once helped build. The barbershop became more than just a place to cut hair. It became a place of renewal, a space where the old generation could pass down their knowledge and wisdom to the younger generation. Michael's gesture had done more than just restore Mr. Henry's business, it had given him a new sense of purpose. The story of how Michael had come to help his childhood barber spread, becoming an example of true leadership, generosity, and the importance of giving back. It was a story that was passed down, not just in Wilmington, but across the country, inspiring others to look out for the people who had helped them along the way. As Michael prepared to leave the barbershop that day, he felt a sense of peace that he had never known before. He had done something meaningful, something that would last far beyond his basketball career, far beyond the headlines and the championships. What he had done for Mr. Henry wasn't just about fixing a problem, it was about creating a legacy of giving and showing that the people who helped shape us deserve to be lifted up when they need it most. "Keep going, Mr. Henry," Michael said as he stood to leave. "This is just the beginning. You're back where you belong." And with that, Michael stepped out of the barbershop, knowing that the story of his mentor's comeback was just one of the many ways he could change lives, by giving people the support and the opportunities they deserve. It wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about the people, the communities, and the legacies we build together. As the weeks passed, the barbershop continued to flourish, and so did the ripple effect of Michael Jordan's actions. News of his gesture spread far beyond Wilmington, and it quickly became a topic of conversation among the basketball world and beyond. People marveled not only at Michael's generosity but also at the way he used his platform to help someone who had played such a pivotal role in his life. For Mr. Henry, things began to feel like a dream. His days of struggling to make ends meet seemed like a distant memory as he found himself surrounded by young apprentices eager to learn and clients who were loyal to both him and his legacy. He had taken his passion for the craft of barbering and turned it into something even more meaningful, an opportunity to give back to his community. Michael's response to his childhood barber's struggles had not only restored a business, it had restored a sense of pride in Mr. Henry, a pride that he had lost in the years of hardship. And it wasn't just the business that had been restored, it was the community's belief in the power of support and mentorship. Mr. Henry became a beacon of hope for others, showing that no matter how tough life got, there was always a chance to rebuild. The press caught wind of the story, and soon, interviews began pouring in. Michael Jordan, who had always been an icon of excellence on the court, now became a symbol of kindness and generosity off it. He spoke about the importance of giving back, of not forgetting the people who helped you when you were still figuring things out. And his message resonated deeply with fans, athletes, and entrepreneurs alike. One evening, as Mr. Henry was sitting in the barbershop, a young man walked in, his eyes wide with excitement. Is this where Michael Jordan helped you get back on your feet?" the young man asked, clearly eager to meet the legendary Barber. Mr. Henry smiled, wiping his hands on a towel before standing up. "Yes, it is," he said proudly. "Michael Jordan is a great man, and he's done a lot for me. But you know, it's not just about the money. It's about giving someone the chance to stand tall again, even when they've fallen down. That's what he did for me. And now, I get to pass that forward." The young man looked at him, his face filled with awe. "I want to learn from you," he said, his voice full of ambition. "I want to be a barber like you, someone who gives back." Mr. Henry placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then let's get to work. You've got the right mindset. You'll go far, just like Mike did. And one day, you'll have the chance to pay it forward, too." It was moments like these that made Mr. Henry realize the true depth of what Michael's gesture had done. It wasn't just about making his life easier, it was about creating a legacy of kindness, of mentorship, of giving others the tools to succeed, just as he had once done for Michael. The young man's words, his eagerness to learn and follow in Mr. Henry's footsteps, were proof that the cycle of mentorship and support was alive and well. But the response wasn't just from the community. Mr. Henry had also received letters and messages from people he hadn't heard from in years, old clients, former colleagues, and even strangers who were moved by his story. They all offered support in various ways. Some offered financial assistance, others offered business advice, and many simply shared their words of encouragement. As for Michael, the response from the public was overwhelming. The basketball world admired him even more, not just for his skill on the court, but for his actions off it. He had always been a role model, but this act of kindness turned him into something even greater, a man who used his influence to change lives, to make a difference when it mattered most. "I've had so many people reach out to me, Mike," Mr. Henry said one day as he and Michael sat in the back of the barbershop, enjoying a quiet moment. "This whole thing, it's bigger than I ever expected. It's not just the shop, it's the people. They see what you did, and it's inspiring them to help someone else. It's making a ripple effect that goes far beyond me." Michael nodded, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "That's what it's all about, Mr. Henry. You did this for me, and now I get to do it for you. And you're right, this isn't just about us. It's about everyone around us, and how we can help each other rise up." The response had been overwhelming, and in the months that followed, the barbershop became a model for community revitalization, a shining example of what could happen when people banded together to help one another. People from all walks of life came through its doors, not just for a haircut, but for the sense of connection, support, and inspiration that it represented. And for Michael Jordan, this was just the beginning. What he had done for Mr. Henry had set off a chain of events that would continue to inspire others, proving that sometimes the most important victories aren't won on the basketball court. They're won by helping others rise, just as you did. Months passed, and the barbershop continued to grow, thriving in ways that even Michael had not expected. But the success of Mr. Henry's business wasn't just about the money or the customers, it was about the transformation that was happening within him and within the community. For Mr. Henry, each day brought a renewed sense of purpose. He woke up every morning with a smile, ready to face the challenges ahead. He had reconnected with the passion for barbering that had once been the center of his life, and he was now sharing that passion with others. The young barbers who had come to learn from him were flourishing under his guidance, and the shop itself became a place of refuge for the community, a place where people didn't just come to get their hair cut, but to find a sense of belonging, of support, and of hope. One day, as Michael visited the shop to check on things, he noticed a group of young people sitting in the corner of the shop, laughing and chatting. They were all aspiring barbers, just like the ones Mr. Henry had mentored. Michael walked over to them, offering a warm greeting. You guys think you've got what it takes to be great barbers? Michael asked, his voice full of enthusiasm. One of the young men, about 18 years old, looked up at Michael, his eyes wide with excitement. Mr. Jordan, you don't know how much it means to have a place like this, where we can learn from someone who's been there. Mr. Henry's the real deal. He's not just teaching us how to cut hair, but how to work hard and give back. It's a whole new world here. Michael smiled, watching as the young man's eyes glistened with pride. That's exactly what this place is all about, Michael said. It's about passing on the lessons we've learned, sharing our experiences, and lifting each other up. This is just the beginning. It was moments like these that reaffirmed Michael's belief in the power of community. The ripple effect of his decision to help Mr. Henry had become something far greater than he could have imagined. The barbershop wasn't just a place for cutting hair, it was a sanctuary for people to come together, to be inspired, and to find their way forward. In the following months, Mr. Henry expanded his business, hiring more young barbers and giving them the same chance he had been given. His success was no longer just about his own survival, it was about providing opportunities for others who needed a second chance, just as Michael had given him. But Michael's involvement didn't stop at helping Mr. Henry open the barbershop. He continued to support the business in various ways, using his platform to bring attention to it, connecting it with other organizations that could provide further support. He also spent time in the shop, talking to customers and mentors, listening to their stories, and learning from their experiences. His presence became a reminder of the power of giving back, of using your success to help those around you. One afternoon, as Michael sat with Mr. Henry in the back of the shop, a conversation began to take shape, one that would change the direction of both of their lives. "Mike," Mr. Henry said, his voice thoughtful. "I've been thinking. You've done so much for me, more than I could ever repay. But I want to do something that keeps this going. I want to build something bigger than this. Maybe a foundation. A place where we can teach kids, not just how to cut hair, but how to build businesses, how to succeed, and how to give back. What do you think?" Michael leaned forward, impressed by Mr. Henry's ambition. "That's exactly what you should do," he said. "You've got the experience, the wisdom, and the heart. This shop is just the beginning of your legacy, Coach. You can reach so many more people with that foundation. And I'll be right here to help you." Mr. Henry smiled, his eyes lighting up with excitement. "I knew you'd say that. I knew you'd understand. Let's do it, Mike. Let's change some lives." Together, they began laying the groundwork for what would eventually become a nationwide initiative, a foundation focused on mentoring at-risk youth, teaching them valuable trade skills, and providing the resources to help them become successful entrepreneurs. The foundation would carry on Mr. Henry's legacy of mentorship, giving young people a chance to learn not just how to cut hair, but how to run a business, how to give back, and how to rise above the challenges life throws at them. With Michael's help, the foundation quickly gained traction, attracting donors, partners, and mentors who believed in the vision. It became a model for other communities across the country, showing what could be achieved when people came together with a shared purpose. For Mr. Henry, the foundation was a dream realized, a way to give back to the next generation and to ensure that his struggles weren't in vain. And for Michael, it was a reminder that success wasn't just about championships or accolades, it was about the people you helped along the way, the lives you touched, and the legacies you created. As they worked together to expand the foundation, Michael and Mr. Henry often found themselves reminiscing about the past, about the old barbershop, the lessons they had learned, and the bond they had formed all those years ago. It was clear that their journey together wasn't over. It had only just begun. And as the foundation flourished, Michael knew that the impact of his decision to help Mr. Henry would continue to ripple outward, affecting generations to come. The true legacy, he realized, was in the lives they had helped to change, and that was something no championship could ever compare to. As Michael Jordan and Mr. Henry's foundation grew, it became more than just a beacon of opportunity for the youth in Wilmington. It became a national movement, a reminder that sometimes the greatest victories in life are not measured in trophies or accolades, but in the lives you impact and the ways you uplift others. The foundation, built on the pillars of mentorship, entrepreneurship, and community support, began to draw attention from all corners of the country. Local barbershops, community centers, and even large corporations began partnering with the initiative, eager to help teach young people the skills they needed to succeed. Michael's influence opened doors, but it was the heart and authenticity of Mr. Henry's story that inspired people to get involved. In the years that followed, the foundation expanded into new cities, bringing its programs to underserved communities and providing young people with a chance to learn trades, develop leadership skills, and, most importantly, understand the value of giving back. For Mr. Henry, watching the foundation grow was a deeply emotional experience. He never could have imagined that the young boy who once sat in his barber's chair, talking about his dreams, would now be the one helping him fulfill his own. The dream of creating a lasting legacy, not just for his barbershop but for the community, was now a reality. One of the greatest moments in the foundation's history came when Michael and Mr. Henry hosted the first annual mentorship event. It was held in a large auditorium, packed with young people from all walks of life, aspiring barbers, entrepreneurs, students, and even those who had struggled to find a direction in life. The event featured seminars, workshops, and inspiring speeches, with Michael and Mr. Henry at the forefront, sharing their wisdom and experiences. During one of the workshops, Michael took the stage, his presence commanding the attention of the room. He spoke candidly, sharing the story of how he had been shaped by his mentors and how the people who believed in him had given him the tools to succeed. "You've heard me talk about basketball, about what it takes to be the best," Michael said, his voice strong but full of humility. "But what I want you to remember is that being the best isn't just about what you do on the court. It's about what you do when no one's watching. It's about how you lift others up, how you help them when they're struggling, and how you give back to your community." The room was silent as Michael's words resonated with every person in the audience. For many of them, hearing Michael Jordan speak about the importance of mentorship and giving back was a transformative moment, one that would shape their own journeys in ways they hadn't expected. But it wasn't just Michael's words that inspired them. It was Mr. Henry's presence, his journey, and the fact that he was living proof that it was possible to overcome adversity and create a positive impact. Mr. Henry's story was the backbone of the foundation, and his humility and dedication to helping others had created a ripple effect that spread far beyond Wilmington. As the event concluded, Michael and Mr. Henry stood together at the back of the auditorium, watching the young people who had been inspired by their story. The feeling of accomplishment was overwhelming, but it was more than just about the numbers, more than just about the success of the foundation. It was about the lives they had changed, the opportunities they had provided, and the example they had set. "Mike, I never thought it would come to this," Mr. Henry said, his voice filled with gratitude. "I never imagined that I'd be standing here, seeing all these young people who are going to do great things. I always thought I'd just be behind the chair, cutting hair and talking to my customers. But now I see that I've been given the chance to change lives in a way I never thought possible." Michael placed a hand on his shoulder, looking out at the crowd. "You've been changing lives your whole life, Coach. I just helped you get back on your feet. This is all you." Mr. Henry smiled, tears welling up in his eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mike. You showed me that sometimes it's okay to ask for help. You taught me that no matter how much we've lost, we can always rebuild, and that the best way to honor our journey is to lift others up along the way." As they walked out of the event together, Michael and Mr. Henry knew that their work was far from over. The foundation was just getting started, and the impact they were making was only beginning to be felt. But one thing was certain: their legacy would live on, not just in the businesses they had helped create or the programs they had built, but in the hearts of the people they had touched, the young barbers, the aspiring entrepreneurs, and the communities that had been given a second chance to succeed. The story of Michael Jordan and Mr. Henry had started with a simple act of kindness, but it had grown into something far greater than either of them could have ever imagined. They had built a foundation not just for success, but for hope, for perseverance, and for the belief that no matter how far you've fallen, there is always a way to rise again. And as Michael Jordan looked to the future, he knew that this was the true measure of greatness.